Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Escape the Rat Race Radio. My name's Christian Rodwell and my guest today is Brian Mayne, and the title of today's conversation is Why Setting Goals is Important. Now, it was at a seemingly low point that Brian discovered the keys to success, that you can change your life by changing your thoughts and feelings about it. Using simple but powerful techniques, Brian learned to hold positive thoughts by setting goals, and through those goals he gradually transformed both himself and his life. 20 years later, and Brian is an international speaker on human potential and has empowered hundreds of thousands of people with his unique systems for success. In 1994, he created a unique process called goal mapping, which has now been taught to over 4 million users worldwide and spawned new products to help people achieve their full potential, such as life mapping, self-mapping, and the 7 Magic Keys development program for children. Goal mapping has helped people from all walks of life to turn their dreams into realities, and Brian is on course to achieving his own goal of lifting the lives of 7 million people. Now, Brian's an author of 4 books and has been voted UK Speaker of the Year by the Academy of Chief Executives, and has also worked with renowned speakers such as Brendan Burchard, Anthony Robbins, Christopher Howard and T. Harv Eker. Quite some credentials, I think you'll agree. So before I introduce Brian into the conversation today, let me remind you that the full show notes as well as the video interview of today's conversation can be viewed along with all other episodes over at www.etrr.online/podcast. So Brian, welcome to Escape the Rat Race Radio. How are you today?
Yeah, good, thank you. Lovely to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in this conversation. And tell me, where in the world are you right now?
I'm sat on the south side of the Isle of Wight in what's really become my hometown, which is Ventnor. And I'm right on the seafront, so I'm looking out the window as we talk at the surfers that are wave jumping right outside, and quite a beautiful coastline looking along it.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely glorious, Brian. So Brian, let's jump right in, and the title, as I mentioned today, is Why Setting Goals is Important. So would you mind kind of rewinding us back to where all of this began for you?
It began for me in around about 1993, when my business and life sort of came to an end, it seemed, at that time. And I went through a huge transition. I'd grown up in a travelling funfair family. And on both sides of my family, I'm related to the 2 old UK circus families. If you grow up in that travelling life, you don't go to school very much. And so I only went to school for a few months each year. I left school at 13. I never learnt to read and write. I had no qualifications. And I worked with a family business, and I sort of did okay. I'd become actually the youngest person in the UK to be given a license to open a disco. And did that for 13 years and did very well with it. But then a lot of things changed here on the Isle of Wight. And one of the big changes was people started going to Ibiza if they go to a disco and not the Isle of Wight. And so the family business went out of business, and I found myself in a big challenge, which was I was £1 million in debt, and that was £1 million back in 1992, so a lot more than it is now. Never had a proper job in my life, no qualifications because I'd left school at 13, unable to read and write because I had dyslexia, and sort of really broken by it all and just didn't know what to do. And I took a job as a salesperson, direct sales, and it wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was one of the few opportunities open to me. And that's what led me into the science of positive thinking and goal setting. And when I learned that positive thinking wasn't just somebody's opinion, but there was a science, a simple science you could learn and a strategy you could apply into your life, it became life-changing for me. And I applied it to all the areas in my life. I applied it obviously to my sales career, but I also applied it to all other areas, including overcoming my learning challenges. And so I actually learnt to read at age 30. And that shift in myself of learning to read at age 30, I wanted to read everything at first, but I made the decision I would only read more information that had actually helped me overcome the dyslexia, which was more personal development. And I just consumed personal development books. I learned to speed read quite quickly after learning to read, and so I'd go through at least a book a week. And I didn't agree with everything I read, but the things that made sense, I applied them in my life. I particularly liked simple techniques for self-motivation, positive thinking, and of course goal setting. I'd never learnt how to set goals consciously. Everyone is a natural goal setter in some way. And that natural ability, if you learn how it works and you learn some natural ability into a powerful skill for achievement. And that became my journey, both learning it for myself and then teaching it to others.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say that everyone has the ability to be a goal setter. So I want to touch on that point, Brian, because we talk a lot within the Escape the Rat Race community of really understanding yourself. You know, self-development is crucial, that you not only just think of, you know, what is the career that I want, but also understanding what you're naturally good at, what your experiences are, and then, you know, trying to find a good match. And some people have very creative minds and are able to kind of focus into the future and have that vision, whereas others tend to be living in the now. So I'm interested in, you know, do different kinds of people find goal mapping and setting goals easier than others?
Yeah, for sure they do. It is a natural ability, and I like a lot of the old speakers like Jim Rohn, who sadly has gone now. People like Jim Rohn made it very simple, and they gave timeless wisdom. So one of the pieces of timeless wisdom is your thought creates your reality. Every thought that we think forms brain cell connections that trigger the release of chemicals such as serotonin, which give us happiness, or cortisol, which creates sadness. And those brain cell connections in turn form beliefs and become commands to our subconscious mind to move us towards the thing we think about most. And so all of us are creating our reality. We're creating our future all of the time, but most people don't realize it because it's happening at a subtle and subconscious level. When you understand it, then you can start to use techniques that help you to make the thoughts of what you want stronger than the thoughts of what you fear. And by doing that, it commands your subconscious to keep you moving towards your desires rather than diminishing your success or going completely off track and into self-sabotage. Now, people don't realize, but worry is the equivalent of negative goal setting. When you worry, you're creating a picture in your mind of what you really don't want. And because it's a worry, you think about it again and again and again. And all of that builds a dominant thought in your mind that becomes a command to your subconscious, and your subconscious can't make value judgments. So it just moves you towards the dominant thoughts, and you end up either diminishing your level of power and happiness and success, or going into full-blown self-sabotage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, of course, many people set goals and many people don't achieve their goals. You've touched on a couple of the reasons there. What other reasons come up most commonly, Brian, for people not achieving the goals that they set?
I think the most common reason is they simply don't know how. If you look at the books from the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, from the top personal development speakers in the world, people like Zig Ziglar, who was, you know, without question, Mr. Goals, or Jim Rohn even, who I love. And if you look at their recommendation on how to set goals, they will tell you to rewrite your goals 100 times a day and to repeat that every day for 1 month. And the reason why they recommend that amount of repetition is because when you're writing words for your goals, they really don't have much impact on your subconscious mind, because your subconscious mind responds to imagery. When you go to sleep at night, it's your conscious mind that goes to sleep. Your subconscious keeps working, comes to the surface and produces dreams. Do you dream in words or pictures? It's always pictures. And I've asked this question of people around the world. I've spoken in more than 30 countries. Regardless of what language someone speaks, they will all dream in pictures, because that's the universal language of the subconscious. The subconscious responds to pictures. And your subconscious is like your little personal autopilot that has the job of moving you towards your intentional dominant thought. This is why in recent years dream boards have become popular, because people have started to understand that to command your subconscious, you need imagery. The challenge often with a dream board is there are lots of nice pictures but no words. And the simple reality is we need both. We each have a creative mind and a logical mind. Our logical mind thinks in words. Our creative mind thinks in imagery. The words help us to be consciously clear about what it is we want to achieve. With words, we can quantify. We can say how much, how many, by when. The imagery serves to activate our creative mind, and through that, to command our subconscious. And we absolutely need to use both when we're setting goals. And this was the big breakthrough with goal mapping. And the reason why it's reached 4.5 million people around the world, and it's endorsed by people like Tony Robbins and John Gray and Brendon Burchard and others, is because the system works. I really haven't done much marketing over the years. Even my biggest clients like Microsoft have invariably come to me based on the recommendation of someone that's used the system and had a good result with it. And that's been how it's spread since 1995. With the release of the books, obviously there was some PR and good publicity, but mostly the spread has been through word of mouth recommendation from people that find it works really well for them.
Absolutely, I've seen all of the testimonials, and as you rightly say, some very well-known people that have recommended your system there. And in terms of someone who's listening right now, Brian, and they've tried goals in the past, and as we said, it just hasn't worked out for them, and they're curious to understand, what does the goal mapping process look like? Why is this different to something they've tried in the past? Do you mind just explaining a little bit about how you take someone from the beginning and get them to a point where they have something that perhaps is tangible and they can really focus on that and make the goals come true?
Yeah, 7 simple steps. So the first step is to use your creative mind, have a daydream. Take out a few moments, close your eyes, dream big, and see your ideal life in the future. And walk through an ideal day and see how your life looks in an ideal day. See the home you're living in, see the work you want to do or not do if you want to retire, travel, health, relationship, all of it, financial freedom. Make a little list, just a wish list. Then the second step, use your logical mind and ask one key question. Which one thing from this list, once achieved, is most going to help me achieve some of the others? You may want them all equally. That's emotion and desire. Logically, strategically, there'll always be one thing. It's different for everyone. Sometimes it's about more fitness or relocating, learning a new skill, changing career. You take that one thing and you make sure that you write it as an affirmation. This is absolutely key to goal setting. So you must write the goal like it's already been achieved. The way to write an affirmation: personal, positive, present tense. So you say the goal like you have it already, because your subconscious mind doesn't understand time. It lives in the moment and now. If you say I'm going to, it will always be in the future. You say it like I have, I earn, I own, I am. And you make sure you're saying what you want and not what you don't want, because the subconscious mind doesn't understand abstract. If you observe very young children, their conscious mind isn't developed, their subconscious is at the surface. If you tell a young child, don't touch, what do? Well, they touch, because the subconscious can't understand the don't part. So whenever we're setting goals, never put down something like lose weight. Say the target weight you want to be, so you're putting the goal in the positive. If you're saying I don't want more debt, all you're going to get is more debt, put it into the positive and say the level of income you desire for the year. And then step 3, imagery. And if you like to draw, we have free paper templates that people can download and draw their map. And if you don't like to draw, we have free software that people can use to create a digital map. Then step 4, really key, get in touch with your strongest emotions for why you want the goals. What are your deepest feelings? Because this is where the motivation and the power is going to come from. Not the logical reasons, the emotional reasons. And step 5, when? Because if you don't put an achievement date on the main goal, it's not really a goal, it's a wish that maybe you'll get round to, maybe not. Put a date in, you're starting to make it firm. You may not achieve it by the date, that's okay. You can put a new date in, but you want a date to aim at. Step 6, how are you going to do it? What are the 3 basic actions or steps you're going to need to take to move along the path towards the achievement of your goal? And then step 7, who is going to help? Is it just you, or are there significant others? And if you think about those 7 steps, what do you want? What's the priority? What does it look like? Why do you want it? When, how, and who? They are the critical elements of conscious achievement. Sometimes we achieve things unconsciously. We're not really clear on all the steps we've gone through to achieve what we've achieved. If you're setting out to achieve something you've never done before, you need to go through those steps of asking yourself, well, what does it look like? What's the priority? How will I know when I've achieved it? Why do I want it? When, how, and who? And the goal mapping process takes you through that journey, captures your answers in words and pictures, so you activate your whole brain, and through that you become consciously clear of what you want, and you command your subconscious autopilot to move you towards it.
That is very, very powerful indeed. And perhaps we can share those 7 steps later.
Absolutely.
for everyone listening. That'd be really cool. One thing you mentioned, Brian, just a little bit earlier, which I really want to pick up on because it's something that's kind of like bugged me a little bit for a long time. You talked about some of the greats there, you know, Jim Rohn, and you didn't mention Brian Tracy, but he's always someone that does come up when we talk about goals. However, it was Earl Shoaff who was Jim Rohn's mentor, and I was listening. I have a CD which I've had for many years, a recording of Earl Shoaff, and he talked about actually writing your goals and then kind of putting them away and not keep looking at them. And he referred to that as almost like if you were trying to plant a seed in the ground, that you would cover it up with earth and you'd water it, but then you wouldn't keep digging it up every day and checking to see if it's growing. So I'm just curious as to, who's got the right story here?
I think it depends on the person very much. I've got a huge folder of letters, and more often these days it's a message from somebody that's tracked me down on Facebook that wants to tell me that they were on my workshop years ago, maybe in a corporate, because I've done a lot of corporate work, and they did the goal mapping and they weren't sure about it, and they've just moved house and they found in the back of a drawer their goal map, and they've looked at it and they've realized they've achieved everything on the map. And so it does work if you don't look at it. I actually believe it works faster when you do look at it. I think the challenge sometimes when you're looking at it is if you start to think negatively, it's not happening. Because actually that's then the command you're sending to your subconscious. And if you believe in the law of attraction, That's the command you're also sending out to the universe. Whereas if you're looking at it and you're getting a good feeling and you're believing it's happening, what you're actually doing, every time you look at your goal, visualize your goal, tell yourself you're going to achieve your goal, you're re-establishing the brain cell connection. Brain cells that fire together wire together. When brain cells wire together, what's actually happening is you're forming new beliefs. Any belief you have about yourself, your life, your ability, other people, any of it, it's just the established connection between two or more brain cells. When you have one of those moments, that's the joining of two or more brain cells. Now, at first, they break apart again. It's called the synaptic gap, the little gap between the brain cells. If you repeat the same thought over, if you remind yourself, if you say, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, as you re-establish that brain cell connection, it's like a little bit of glue, some blue tack. Gradually, it sticks together and becomes established. And those brain cell connections that become established form beliefs. And at first, when the connection's weak, well, it's a weak belief. We would call it an opinion. Remind yourself some more. Visualize in your mind, yeah, I'm doing it. Yeah, I'm achieving it. I'm seeing it. The connection grows stronger, and now it's a full belief. Visualize it even further, and it becomes really, really strong. It's a conviction. It's all different stages of the same basic thing, and all of it is a command to your subconscious, for good or bad. Because, of course, we form brain cell connections and beliefs that tell us we can't do something, and that really holds us back. I had a guy on my workshop some years ago now who was a motorcycle riding instructor. We were talking about how the subconscious mind can't make choices. It responds to your strongest thought or belief. And he said, do you know what the big danger is for motorcyclists, Brian? I said, no. And he said, it's all the potholes we have in the road. He said, if you hit one of these potholes in your car, it can do a lot of damage. But if you hit one on a motorbike, it can kill you. He said, here's what we're teaching the motorcyclists. Be aware of the hole, but whatever you do, don't stare at the hole. Because if you stare at the hole, your subconscious will automatically move you to the hole. It's the same principle they teach in skiing, in Formula One racing car driving, when they're teaching the race car drivers. Same principle they're teaching my young daughter with her bicycle riding proficiency test. And it's a great life principle. As we move along our path in life, there'll be many holes. We need to be aware but not stare. If we start to overly focus on the negative, if we start to worry about the things that concern us, without realizing what we're doing, we start to move towards them unconsciously. It's what self-sabotage is. So how do you counteract that? Well, you counteract that by having clear goals about where you do want to go. And you need to look at them sufficiently enough that they become the dominant thought in your mind, and it thereby keeps your subconscious moving you towards those. And this isn't some new thing that I've made up. You can go back thousands and thousands of years and you're going to hear the same basic principle. In Hinduism, in Buddhism, they create yantra and mantra. So mantra, chant with words. A yantra is a little power pattern they draw on paper or sometimes with coloured sand or rice like the Buddhists do. And by using the imagery and the words, they're activating both sides of their brain. They're chanting about how they want to be. I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm one, I'm one, I'm one. And the imagery's commanding their subconscious to help them be that way. And it's the same basic principle. And this is what's given the power to the technique. This is why people like Tony Robbins have had me come teach it to the top of their customer base. Tony Robbins got his own goal-setting technique. He really didn't need to fly me over to America to work with his people and teach mine. But it was based on the power of recommendation because the system works. And what makes it work is firstly creating the map. That starts the initial brain cell connection. But then after that, it's looking at the map as often as you need to. And with some people that really got a strong belief in themselves, perhaps they don't need to look at it very often. And for other people, that perhaps are a little bit lower in their belief about themselves, it's important they look at it on a regular basis. I tell people, put it up, stick it up on the wall, and particularly put it somewhere where you're going to see it first hour in the morning, because that first hour in the morning you're in alpha rhythm. It's a natural state you go into when you wake up, and the connection for that first hour to your subconscious mind is 100 times greater than it is at midday. So anything you look at early in the morning has a massive impact on your subconscious mind. That's why it's not good to look at the news early in the morning. It's mostly bad news. Nourishing stuff, or write a gratitude list. If you've got a few minutes spare time, do some meditation. A lot of people got busy days, just got to get up and get on with it. But, positive things for that first hour for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Brian. What about in the evening as well? You mentioned about going to bed and obviously then the dreams. So is that also an important time maybe just to switch off and really reaffirm these thoughts?
The brain goes through 4 different rhythms in a 24-hour period. So at midday you're in beta rhythm, and that's when your conscious mind is wide awake, and that's the worst time to review goals, because your conscious mind has the job of analysing and criticising and rejecting. And so if you've got a big goal and you look at it at midday, your conscious mind is going to go, yeah, all right, but not really. And so looking at it first thing in the morning or last thing at night when your brain goes back into alpha are the key times for goal revision, just before you go to sleep and when you first wake up. While you're asleep, your brain slows right down into 2 other rhythms called theta and delta. But it's alpha rhythm that's the key state for goal review.
Yeah, I was looking at the binaural beats, and I think that's talking about similar getting your brain into those rhythms, right? Yeah.
I used to be a DJ.
Well, we share some common interests there in the dance scene. Yeah. And how?
Do you know Brandon Block?
I certainly do. Yes.
So he teaches my system.
Does he really?
Yeah, he's become one of the certified trainers. And there's a few people I know from the music scene years ago, when I was back in it, that I've moved into personal development, and I still work with them.
That's fantastic.
World, really.
Yeah, I see Brandon occasionally at some of the events. Yeah, he's really dived into personal development, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's doing really well.
Yeah. And how important is it to have the right people in terms of a support network? So when you've created the goal map, to be able to share that with others and have that, is that something that you see has additional benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. When I take people through creating their map and we go through those 7 steps, then it's about using the map. The first thing is I get people to sign it, because psychologically your signature's like a promise. And then to see it and say it once each day. As you look at the pictures, say the words. So again, you're activating both sides of your brain. And then the 4th thing is share it with like-minded people. Because when you tell others about your goals, one, you're saying it out loud, which in hypnosis is called a double reinforcement, because you're hearing yourself say it. But also you're demonstrating belief in yourself. You're making a statement. Here's what I'm going to go and do. Now, I put the sort of line in with like-minded people, because if you're sharing your goals with someone that's really negative and is being a dream stealer, and you've got to defend it and say, yeah, I will do it, and they're putting you down, and sometimes even friends and family do that, then it's counterproductive. And so I think having a community, and it can be an online community, but having a community where you feel supported, that you can go to, and my dog barking in the background, I'm sorry, that you can go to, and in comfort tell people about your dreams, your aims, your ambitions, is essential.
One other question I'd love to ask Brian is in terms of time frames. So if they followed the system, they've put their goals down on paper, and it's all in place, how can someone know what's a realistic time frame to set for a goal? So things like financial freedom is probably something that everyone wants to strive for, but who knows whether that can be achieved in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years? What's your advice for that?
That word realistic's a difficult word, because one person's reality is another person's fantasy. When I set the goal that I was going to become a speaker and a trainer, and I was going to write books, and I was going to go around the world, even my own mother said, "Get real, son, you can't even read and write properly." And she wasn't being negative. She was deeply concerned I'd lost my mind. And I was a little bit concerned maybe I have as well, because it was all sort of new and fresh. So I think it comes down to each person to check in with themselves and perhaps try and get out of their ego head and into their heart and ask the question, is this goal for my highest good and the highest good of all? And is this date right? Now, the thing with the date is not to get too hung up on it. Because if the goal is for your highest good and you don't achieve it by the date you've set, but it's for your highest good, then it's worth continuing with. I've had goals like my goal mapping book, which has been a huge seller. It's been translated into loads of languages. It's reached more and more people. And yet I had to reset the date on getting that book published 3 times. Because I wasn't realistic, to use your word, about the date. I was over ambitious. I gave myself 18 months. 18 months come and went, no book. Reset the goal, gave another 18 months, no book. And each time I was disheartened, but each time I asked, is this for my highest good? Is it worth continuing with? Yeah. All right, so we're going to give more time. And it was a big learning for me because it taught me about being in the flow. And rather than forcing the goal with ego, and I was going to self-publish the book originally, I held the belief that it would happen in the right time, in the right way, with the right people. And the absolute ideal publisher come along. And they did it in a way, and they're a very spiritual publisher as well. And so for me, it was just the perfect outcome with the book. It only happened by me deciding to continue with the goal even though the date had passed by, and holding the belief that it was the right thing to do. And I'd say that with other people, and I've got some financial advisors and financial companies that are certified to teach goal mapping, and they do goal mapping with people about their retirement. And they will actually create not just one financial freedom goal map, but maybe 3. They'll have a long-term one about their retirement. They'll have a short-term one about the level of investment they want to make, say, this year. And they'll have one that's somewhere in between the 2, so that the person can actually get clear on the journey they need to make and break down that investment for the life they want to live in their retirement into, all right, what's it going to cost in terms of how much I need to put away month by month, year by year.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I absolutely love the goal mapping system, and it's been so fascinating speaking with you today. If our listeners want to go and check this out for themselves, where's the best place for them to head to? Goalmapping.com. That's great. And perhaps we can get hold of those 7 steps, as we said earlier, and I'll make them available as part of this podcast. I can send you the paper templates, which are on a PDF, which you can circulate. And if people want to use the digital version, they just go to goalmapping.com/register. I don't share the data with anyone, and I don't send out loads of spam emails and stuff. They can just sign up, use it all for free. That's fantastic. And all of the show notes, everything that we've talked about today will be over at the Escape the Rat Race website, as well as in the show notes. So etrr.online/podcast81. Brian, thank you so much for being an amazing guest on Escape the Rat Race Radio today. Very best of luck for the future, although I think you don't need luck because it's all mapped out. Yeah, thank you, Christian. Take care.